All right, folks, this is Yoda again with Racing Nation. I'm standing in the Mazda Road to Indy trailer right now with Mr. Howden, Rob Howden. He is the voice of the Mazda Road to Indy, and we're going to get sort of a state of the series from Rob and just pick his brain a little bit about what's going on so far in 2016, where they're going throughout the rest of the season, maybe spend about 5 or 6 minutes with him and just see how things are going up to now and what his predictions are for the future for where we're taking the Mazda Road to Indy.
Well, I think right now we have both ends of the Mazda Road to Indy looking good. Obviously, USF 2000, 20 to 24 cars. It'll be the final year with this tube frame car. That's one of the exciting things about the program. We'll get back to that later. You go to the other end, and, of course, we have 16 drivers in Indy Lights, a 33% increase from last year. That's huge to get to that 16 number. Magic number, of course, 20. But you start getting the momentum. You start getting some European drivers who have come over, Dean Stoneman, Felix Rosenquist. Once we start getting some more European guys here, I think we're going to see 20 cars next year. And, of course, the scholarship, the Mazda Road to Indy, that's really what's drawing these guys over. In the middle is Pro Mazda, only 10 to 12 cars right now, and it's kind of in a mid-stage where we're going to have a new car in 2018. So I would not be surprised to still see between 10 and 14 cars next year. I think it's kind of a point where people are waiting for that new car. And we're going to bring the car out with USF 2000 first. And that's the cool thing. So Tatis has built a new car for us, the USF 17. That'll I think they're going to pull the cover off it at the Indianapolis 500 weekend. So we're going to see the car at least. And they're going to test it throughout the summer. And that brand new car will be run next year.
And that car, like you said, that's going to be the common ground between USF 2000 and Pro Mazda going forward. And so many questions are being asked regarding exactly what the upgrade path is going to be from USF 2000 to Pro Mazda, utilizing the same tub. Obviously, there's going to be different aero configurations, different powertrain configurations. I would imagine, are we hanging just a little bit wider A-arm on the Pro car? Do we have that kind of information that we can talk about yet?
Nothing. We don't have that lineup of, hey, this is an X, Y, Z is what we're going to do to the car. They don't know that yet. Obviously, the first step is the fact that we go from the tube frame to the carbon car, the carbon tub car, which puts it in line with every other junior formula entry-level program around the country now. You know, there's still the F1600 cars that run with the tube frames, but people want that tub car now, the sequential gearbox, you name it. So that's going to happen for sure. But when we go from USF 2000 to Pro Mazda, number one obviously is the horsepower. We're going to go 90 horsepower, 90 to 100 horsepower more. It's really just going to come down to bigger tires, bigger brakes, and more aero. You know, they're going to stop faster. They're going to accelerate harder. We're going to give them more aerodynamics. And I think you're right. The footprint will be a little bit wider as well, too. That wouldn't surprise me at all.
We were talking this morning. We had a couple, actually a USF 2000 and Pro Mazda driver up in the booth with us for a live show this morning. And we were talking about disparities in lap time between the two classes. Right now it's about 2.5 seconds. Trying to maintain that gap or looking to maybe open that gap up a little bit and give the Pro Mazda driver a little more speed than what they currently have, or are we not there yet? We can't talk about that yet either?
Well, obviously right now it all depends on what engine they decide to go to. I don't think they'll be staying with the rotary engine, the Renesis. I wouldn't be surprised if they transition into a new motor. That would make sense now. The Renesis isn't used as much anymore, so I think they'll transition into a new motor. Personally, I'd like to see a little more horsepower in Pro Mazda. I'd like to see a little more horsepower in Indy Lights as well, but we are where we are right now. I think the key thing moving forward is just as long as you give those drivers that extra step. That's all we try to do is give them that extra step. You know, they run one oval in USF 2000, 2 ovals in Pro Mazda, 3 ovals in Indy Lights. If we give them that extra 90 horsepower, the more grip, and the more aero, I think that's going to give them what they need. This track's tough to compare them to because the track is so wide open. There's so much running where there's not a lot of hairpin turns, where the acceleration is so much more in a Pro Mazda. When you go to a point and squirt track, whether it's one of the street tracks, where we're on the throttle a lot more, even Indianapolis. There's a couple of slower corners there where the gap will be more than 2 seconds. Even though this track's a long way, it's just such a flowing, wide, high-speed racetrack.
And just the more downforce and more footprint for the Pro car versus the USF 2000 car. Shifting gears a little bit, there is sort of this year, for the first time, an unofficial rung below the Mazda Road to Indy in that Clint McMahon in the USF 2000 series this year got a scholarship from Formula 600 and has joined the USF 2000 ranks thanks to that sort of unofficial path. Very cool to see. The Formula 600 car, total handful. And I've actually talked to Clint, and he's very used to the Formula 600 car and how twitchy that thing is. And when Clint and I talked, he was like, the F2000 car, USF 2000 car, is a dream. compared to that. And how many folks do you see coming in from what I would consider to be non-traditional paths to the series, or is it?
Honestly, to look at it, I think most people will look, and most teams will funnel guys into F1600. They'll either do that, or they'll come out one of the school series, whether it's the new Lucas Oil School of Racing. I think you're going to see guys come out of that once they get that deal going. The F600 program is such an awesome program. One of the big differences, though, is as you know, they're not. There's no suspension. Yeah. It's just a puck suspension. It's the hockey puck suspension. So the car's very, I don't want to say twitchy. It's just you got to be very smooth when you're driving it, and it'll buck a little bit if you get it rolling, but. Man, that 600cc power plant is just so much horsepower. That's so much fun to drive.
They were running 150 mile an hour on the high banks of Daytona.
It's fast.
Yeah.
Luckily, the guys that are building the cars now are putting a lot of tubing in them. They're a really safe car, and I've always loved F500 and F600 as well. And that's kind of an interesting way to come through. But I think, honestly, still, the way most people are looking at it is to get into an F1600 because there's great 1600 series in Canada, in the U.S., and I think what Dan Anderson and the crew have done with the whole shootout, the scholarship shootout, the Mazda Indy shootout, that's the big thing. Because I think that so many people, you're going to get the Scottish champion and the English champion and the Australian Formula 1600 champion. They're all coming to Mazda Raceway Laguna Seca at the end of the year. It's going to be a 20-driver shootout. There's going to be a top driver from Rotax Karting there as well.
Wow.
Somebody's going to leave there with a $200,000 scholarship who's come from all over the place. And that's really what Dan's done. Yeah, there's a couple other ways to get into the program, whether you're coming through RGB Motorsports and F1600 with Clint's program, or whether you're coming into any one of the world programs, around the country, around the globe, where you're running F1600, and if you win a championship, you get a chance to run for the USF 2000 scholarship. I think that's huge.
It's beyond huge, and I remember. I mean, I've been following Anderson for a long time. I know one of the guys that works for the Mazda Road to Indy Championship really well. Ken Burris and I have known each other for a long, long time. I remember Ken asking me at Road Atlanta. It's got to be 7 or 8 years ago now. You guys were running. I think you were running lights, and it was Star Mazda back then, and. Yeah, and I just remember the black, gray, and red cars, and Ken was like, get all the pictures of them you possibly can. And this is before the Andersons took over the Mazda Road to Indy, I believe. It predated that. And to see where they went from team owner, car owner, to actually facilitating the series, it's elevated what's going on with Mazda Road to Indy in a big way. So what was the catalyst that got the Andersons into managing the series versus just being a team owner?
Well, the funny thing is, Dan's actually bookended series ownership rather. So Dan's son used to race himself. He was a fantastic driver, and he came up through the SCCA ranks. Mike Anderson actually was an SCCA Formula Continental champion, won the title there. Dan started the USF 2000 championship. I think it was a USAC sponsored deal, probably back in the late 90s. That was actually his program. Then he sold that series and kind of transitioned into team ownership. They had a USF 2000 team. He had the Star Mazda team, as you said, and they, in fact, got into the Indy Lights program as well. They had J.R. Hildebrand, Mara Romancini, Andrew Prendeville. A lot of different guys ran for their Lights program. And then Dan kind of cycled out of that, got out of that, and kind of sat back for a bit, and then jumped in. And I think when he decided to get back into USF 2000, then when Star Mazda, when Gary Rodriguez shut that down, Dan was kind of, Mazda came and said, hey, we need this series, and Dan picked it up. And then the same thing happened with Indy Lights. Was like, well, we'd like somebody to run this. And Dan, you're doing a fantastic job with what you've done so far as part of this Mazda Road to Indy. Do you have any interest in managing Indy Lights? And Dan's the kind of guy that won't back down from a challenge, and he believes in the program and the kids and the people that are involved. So I just think he probably said, I got to do it. But that's what makes it so great is that Dan has been a team owner. Yeah. He's been a dad. He spent the money on his kid, and he gets it. He gets from all the different angles. He understands a team owner, father, series owner. He gets it. And I think that's every decision he makes. He keeps everybody in thought, in his decision making. And I think that's what's provided a lot of the success and the forward momentum.
So it's truly right place, right time, having the right skill set in place to have the conversation when it comes up, and just all of a sudden he's like, I'm running the Mazda Road to Indy.
And you know what? To have John Doonan and Mazda and Chris Pantani and Cooper Tires with that same vision, that's why it's happening. If it wasn't for everybody involved pushing in the same direction, it might not have happened the way it has. But it's a perfect storm.
Yeah, it's amazing to watch. It's absolutely amazing to watch. And what do you envision, or can you say what the vision is for 2017, 2018? Like where do you go from here? Do you just keep managing what you've got and looking at the new cars coming in and like you said, the Pro Mazda field right now, not obviously where you want it to be, but definitely has the ability with the new car to grow. Just pulling drivers from all over the world and bringing them in?
I think you hit it bang on. 17 and 18, 2017, 2018, I think are going to be years of transition. By 2018, we're going to have 3 brand new cars. The Lights car will be, 3 years old at that point. We'll have a brand new Pro Mazda car and a 1-year-old USF 2000 car. We're going to be current. We're going to be modern. And we're not really modern right now because the Pro Mazda's been around for 15 years. And it's been around for quite a while. Maybe not quite 15, let's say 12 years it's been around for that Pro Formula Mazda. So we'll have brand new race cars, which attracts people. That's the key thing. A lot of guys didn't come over to run Indy Lights because they didn't want to run that 13-year-old race car. It just didn't transition well to IndyCar. So as we do this transition to a full modern fleet, a full modern ladder of cars and technology, I think what's going to happen is you're going to see more drivers from around the world. We have a lot of domestic drivers that are here. We get a bunch of drivers. We get a lot of guys from South America. I really believe we're going to start tapping in from the Middle East, China, that kind of thing. And I think we're going to start tapping a lot from the UK and Europe. I think we'll see more drivers internationally.
I think you'll see a lot from the UK and Europe just because Formula One isn't the path that it truly was 10 years ago for a lot of the young up-and-comers in that spot in the world. So they're looking for other places to go run open wheel. And
if you look at GP2, it's going to be $2 to $2.5 million to run for a winning team, right? And we've already seen here in Indy Lights, we have 4 winners and 4 races from 3 different teams able to win. We had 6 different teams in the top 7 in today's race. So the equality's there. You don't have to be with one of the top teams to pay $2.5 million to be with a top team. And how many racers out there, and it's hard to talk about budgets, but there are guys out there with good money. They have $10 million to try to get themselves into Formula One, and they get sneezed at. They come over here, and they have $10 million, they're going to be in almost any ride they want. Right. That's the difference. Formula One has priced themselves out to the point it's so hard to get into it. It's just even the politics just to get into it. You could be in a ride and lose a ride because somebody brings double the money. Whereas you come over here and you become part of the Verizon IndyCar series, which is such a strong series. It's diverse. It's road courses, ovals, natural terrain circuits. And it's got the greatest spectacle in racing, the Indianapolis 500. You can hang a good sponsorship on that, and you can have a fantastic career racing this program over here.
Absolutely. Rob, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. This is Yoda from Racing Nation. Like I said earlier today, we're going to be at Barber Motorsports Park all weekend long. We're talking Mazda Road to Indy. We're talking IndyCar. Pirelli World Challenge GT is actually on track right now, getting ready to wrap up their weekend. Good things from Barber Motorsports Park. Thanks for taking the time, Rob.